wait. And baby, I'm TFC till I die.
Hello and welcome back to Toronto Till I Die, the Toronto FC fan show. I'm Mike Newell. And they won on the road to the best team in the Western Conference. The vibes are good. They're high. Oh my, it's like this team is maybe together playing like a unit. Who knew that could happen in the year of our Lord 2025? With me, as always, is Michael Singh. Mikey, how you doing? We haven't really had a chance to talk outside of the Canada Day special. So it's been a couple of games now. How are you sort of interpreting the TFC vibes now that the Italian dance party is no longer a thing at Toronto FC?
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to do the show fresh off a win. So these are my favorite
When was the last time
shows.
we actually did that?
Hey, these are my favorite shows, so we can just gas up the team as much as possible. No, but seriously, I think, I mean, let's get right into it. Like, I think since Insigne Bernardeschi left, we've seen a different version of Toronto FC, and it's one that's allowed, say someone like a Theo Corbeanu to thrive in the system, to be the guy attacking wise. It's allowed more touches on the ball for someone like that. It's it's different. Like, it's a different DNA with this team. It's a different style of play with this team. This team isn't. Let's face it, they're not great with the ball. They're not exciting to watch at all with the ball. They're not too creative whatsoever. But man, this team fights. This team battles. This team, really leaves it all out on the pitch, and that's what we saw on Saturday. So, or sorry, Saturday. I'm so used to the weekend games. Last night, Wednesday against San Diego. So, for them to put in that effort to leave it all out there and then be rewarded for the 3 points, man, that's got to feel good.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think it can't. I don't think you can underestimate how important it is to have a team that has essentially lost its two DPs, right? Like, you lost your two cornerstone DPs. You had to let them go. The vibes were not great. And yet, what I've noticed since Insigne and Bernardeschi have left, or at least were left out of the squad, I mean, they've won two games. One of them, they were still technically TFC players, but weren't in the 18, is that the fight that they talked about throughout the season, you're now seeing more of that come to light. And you're seeing a team that, like you said, are they pretty on the ball? No. Are they playing fluid champagne football? No. But at least the identity of being really hard to beat, the identity of digging in and doing work and fighting for one another is definitely there. And you look,
Well, they have no choice,
pretty
right?
much. You're exactly right.
That's the thing. But okay, they have no choice. That's easy to say. But the other thing is, and we got to give credit to Robin Fraser for this too, is like everyone who is seeing the pitch is buying into that.
Yeah.
They know that's what they have to do in order to grind out a result. They know that's what they have to do in order to keep games close. They got to battle for every ball, and they didn't have that mentality in the past, right? We talked so many times on this show about the way that this team is so fragile, the way that this team can just be broken down by a single moment, but that's not happening anymore, at least in this small sample size. So, in a sense, really refreshing to see. Again, it's not the most attractive football, but who cares at this point? It's the middle of July. We know what this season is. At the very least, you're starting to see some potential, and you're starting to see more opportunities for guys in greater roles. So, we talk about a Theo Corbeanu. We talk about maybe even a Kosi Thompson,
That's who I
who
was thinking of directly.
who's put in, yeah, he's gotten more time to really shine a little bit here and show that he's growing into more of a leader, showing that toughness that he brings on the pitch. That, Toronto again, DNA. I'll throw it out again. That Toronto DNA, and someone last night. I mean, Richie Laryea, come on. Like, that is the definition of Toronto DNA. He is the definition of Toronto DNA. So, I mean, I'm excited for that part of it, where it felt like over these last couple of seasons, there was the fact that they had to defer to an Insigne or defer to a Bernardeschi to play through those guys. Now they have no choice. Now they have to step up and try to be those guys and try to play some football here, and it's going to allow a lot of people to, I think, shine.
Yeah, and you know what I kind of like about this team right now? And look, there's still a lot. Look, all the issues we've talked about with this team, even subtract the Italians, right? They're still somewhat there, in terms of some of the discipline stuff, some of the final third execution stuff. That's still all there, but I think what I like about this team is I see a team that's going to fight, right? Like I see a team that is going to dig in for one another. And I think, on Wednesday night, and we could talk a little bit about Saturday too,
Sure.
because look, it's a disappointing way to drop points against a team you probably should have beat. That Atlanta team is not great. But you see a team that is like committed to a defensive principle. And because of that, you can stay in games, even in games where you're not necessarily, imposing your will on a team. Right. And I think you saw that a bit Saturday. You saw up until, Charlie Sharp. And then Wednesday night, you saw a team that was committed, knew they weren't going to have a lot of the ball, knew that, they had, San Diego's built a team that has some dangerous players, and you move a player like Richie Laryea into the midfield to combat some of the things they're trying to do. And he just puts on the hard hat and goes. Right.
Mhm.
And I think that is, if people start talking about a DNA for this team, or a culture, or the sort of whatever this team is going to be in the future, I don't think that's the one defining culture, but it's a piece of that culture that
For
you
sure.
need to set to get yourself into a position of success in the future.
Well, I think even Jason Hernandez spoke about this when he first outlined that vision is, anyone who wears that Toronto FC shirt is going to be run to the ground for 90 minutes. That was his quote or something along those lines. Um, and those that were there, at least on, Wednesday night, even a bit Saturday, they were running themselves into the ground. So,
Yeah.
I mean, everyone wants to talk about, let's talk about Richie, Robin Fraser's decision to move him to center midfield last night. I thought was a very, very, very smart decision. Obviously, I mean, it worked, but to have the insight to do that, I mean, it's a position I don't think he's played since 2019. Because if you remember, he came over as a central midfielder from Orlando,
Yeah.
and it wasn't until Greg Vanney kind of spotted his traits and saw that there was an opportunity for him to excel at fullback. But it was kind of reminiscent of the times where Greg Vanney would play Richie at like left wing or at right wing, and he'd still find ways to contribute to the team, and that's exactly what he did last night. I mean, it's listen, Richie can be this team's best player on its day, and in fact, on most days when you look at now that Bernardeschi's gone and Insigne is gone, he should really be this team's best player on most nights. So to put him in the part of the field where that TFC are going to be in its biggest battle, it just makes sense because Richie Laryea is the soldier that you want out there every single day of the week. Look, he was all over the park last night. I think more importantly, defensively, not only was he, winning battles in central midfield, but he had the pace and the fight and the ability to track back and defend when there were gaps, when the right or whoever's playing left back, whether it be Raul Petretta at times or, when Tyrese Spicer came in, Richie was there to cover that space as well. He was also there to drive forward with the ball. We saw moments where Richie did that, which alleviated pressure. And I think the biggest thing too, and this is something he's so good at, is Richie drew fouls at the right times. Like
Yes.
when TFC were absorbing a ton of pressure, it was Richie Laryea that would win the ball back and would, in the way that Richie does, draw fouls. And what that does is it takes not only a minute, 2 minutes off the clock, whatever, however long it is, but it allows TFC to reset and take that extra little bit of time and take the little bit of sting out of San Diego and that rhythm as well. So look, it's a really, really promising sign to see that Richie was so comfortable in that role. Is it something that they can do week in, week out? I don't think it's something they have to. I think it's something they could, but I don't think it's something they have to. It really depends on the opponent, and it's never a bad idea to keep Richie Laryea near the opponent's biggest threat because we know how good he is at just locking it down.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, a lot of players last night played a massive role in that as some unsung heroes,
Mhm.
or at least ones we don't always talk about. I think that partnership along Rosted is still relatively solid. I don't know what that looks
Sure.
like next year, in terms of what they want to do, but obviously, as we kind of said, um, in our last show, like guys are auditioning for roles, on this team going forward and saying that, hey, I can be a part of a core going forward. Now, of course, look, a lot of these guys will not be back next season,
Yeah.
but there are guys putting their hands up, and we talked him about a little earlier about him, but Kosi Thompson. I'll admit the right back experience was not something I was a massive fan of.
Yeah.
When the decision was to move him back there and give him minutes, but give him credit. He's made mistakes this year, high profile mistakes,
Yep.
at times, but he has really started, I feel, to grasp that position and kind of make it his own. And it's really interesting because if he couldn't do that, if he was really struggling, then you don't have the option of maybe putting Richie into that midfield last night. You probably
Totally.
have to be like, we got to play Richie at right back, and we'll try to figure out another solution in midfield. But because Kosi has, grown in that position and grown as a footballer in general, you have that confidence to stick him at that right back position, and then it allows you to be tactically flexible with arguably, like you said, your best player.
100%. And it's easy to forget just how young a guy like Kosi Thompson is. I mean, he's 22 years old,
Yeah.
and he looks like a man out there. Like his frame has always been there. His work ethic, he always says the right things, and he's had like a funny TFC career. Obviously, having that stint overseas very briefly, which obviously didn't go the way that he wanted, but
Hmm.
he's come back. He's worked. He's done all the right things, and now he's finding himself in yeah, that more of that comfortable role where he is once again just in everybody's faces, just once again just sticking his foot into everything, and he's a very solid player there. Like, is he everything that you want going forward? No, absolutely not. I think there's a lot of room and a lot of yeah, just a lot of room to grow there. But is he a stay-at-home right back right now that can hang in this league? Absolutely.
Hmm.
And he's a guy who has an option for next season, and I think it's a no-brainer to pick up a guy like Kosi Thompson's option at this point because he can help you. And we know like from past too, he can also play different positions. So
Yeah.
that versatility can also come into play. So he's a very what I would describe as a very good role player right now that could potentially grow into a starter's role as time moves on. But I still think that's Richie's best role when the team is built out and fleshed out. But at least for now, he can definitely provide some very serviceable minutes. Two other performances I want to highlight are just very quickly Maxine Dominguez and
Yeah.
Matty Longstaff.
Yeah.
I thought both of those guys were excellent. I think when we talk about work and work ethic right off the bat, I mean, those two guys led the charge for this team, really playing right behind Ula. Um, they took away both of the central midfield options, and it wasn't until really late in the first half when San Diego made the adjustment to drop to just a single pivot, which, caused a little bit of chaos, but they were able to get into the break and reset and taking away that middle of park really started with those guys, and the amount of work that they were asked to do was, honestly extraordinary, and they were up to it every single time, whether it is a run to close down a defender they were asked to do. They did it without, you know, any qualms. Like they were soldiers again. I'll use that word again. They were just so, relentless out there, and not they didn't fade at all. And it was, I thought, even Matty Longstaff, like I thought it was probably both of their best games in Toronto FC shirts. Quite frankly, I just thought there was there's a lot of positives to take away from them, and you love to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've somehow gone nearly 16 minutes and not talked about the goal scorer himself, Theo Corbianu. Man of the match performance. At least he was given the man of the match. He's in the team of the match week, whatever they call it now. I still can't get over how that's worded, but whatever. A player that we've talked about a bit on this show, both positively and a little bit negatively, in terms of, a player we see a lot of promise in, a player that we know has a lot of talent in the locker, and you're just kind of waiting and just when are we going to actually see that come to fruition? It feels like this last sort of stretch, let's call it 6 matches, we're starting to see what he can really be, and again, I feel like we're just kind of only scratching the surface of that at the moment. Great penalty taken, great job to win the penalty in the first place, but maybe talk a little bit about his sort of evolution since he's come to the club, getting regular minutes, his sort of
Sure.
rocky start, and now kind of transitioning to a player where it's just like it's going to be a no-brainer that they're going to pick up his option for his loan, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, I guess first off, just now I look like a genius for calling this player out for the
yeah,
DNC.
yeah,
Right?
yeah. You
I
did
looked
call it. You did
I
call
looked
it.
I looked very stupid for quite a bit of time, and now I look like a genius, right? No,
Yeah,
I all the credit to Theo Cormier. I mean, look, he had a really, really, really rough start. I think it's
yeah,
fair to say with TFC. Um, he's different, man. Like the way he runs isn't natural. The way he dribbles isn't really natural. Like his steps aren't the same rhythm, I feel like, as other players, and I think that's what makes him so incredibly difficult to defend. Like he's very unpredictable in his types of moves and when he's going to take a touch, that sort of thing. So we're starting to see a lot of that shine. Look, he wouldn't have this opportunity had it not been for Insigne or Bernardeschi leaving the club, in my
yeah,
opinion, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
now that he's able to play on his, most comfortable position, we're starting to see Theo Corbeanu start to come out, and the best of Theo Corbeanu start to come out. Um, yeah, I mean, look, the one part of it about picking up his option is, yeah, okay, based on the way he's playing, it makes sense. But the other part why it makes so much sense is, man, he wants to be here.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing is like he genuinely wants to be here, and I think he wants to be here because he sees the opportunity, right? He sees the potential with Toronto FC, hitting that reset button. He sees the opportunity for himself to really evolve here and play a significant role in Major League Soccer. So yeah, I think he's definitely trending towards TFC picking up that option, depending on the price tag. I imagine it can't be much, maybe $1 million. And what that would mean, depending on the length of the contract that he has or that they agree to, what that would mean is, that being taxed on to his cap hit. So that also has to be in mind. Like I still I don't think he's a high TAM player.
Mm.
I think he is, maybe a $700,000 player. Could he grow into something more? Yeah, perhaps, but he's gotta continue to evolve, continue to show that he can do this consistently. Like, this is a nice stretch, but the challenge is gonna be how much can you replicate this, and how much can you replicate this when Toronto FC are also a good team?
Well, that's the thing, and maybe that leads into my next question, but I'll just say this in regards to Theo. I think it's a good thing that we're seeing a player that struggled a bit to start and is sort of naturally progressing in the way that you would think he's still like just like Kosi, he's still a really young guy, right?
Mhm.
Like in terms of his career, and really this is maybe the first real stretch in his career where he's playing like every week, like consistently. Like in Europe, he'd play and he'd get like a stretch of maybe a couple of games and then he'd have to be back on the bench. And then he'd get like one or two games and then be back on the bench. Whereas now he is getting a consistent run and you're seeing week to week the growth. There's still more to do. Like some of his decision making in this final third still needs work, you
Sure.
know. I think he still needs some work defensively. But again, you're not necessarily asking him to be the best defensive winger in
No.
Major League Soccer. You're asking him to be passable, right? And I think that's the stuff that he still needs to continue to work on. And I still think he's got more goals in him. Like I think he's got way more goals in him. And you could see, and one thing I've noticed about him is that his finishing has gotten a lot better throughout the
Yeah.
season. Like
Very solid. Yeah.
it's gotten become very solid. And even like on Saturday, he took a couple of cracks from the wing that really gave the Atlanta goalkeeper some trouble, right? He was able to save him, but he can get in there and get that shot off really quickly if he can, get his hips right over the ball and really give it a good whack. So that's a player that I think, when you think about, okay, what's the future for this team look like? And
Mhm.
where do you start to build? That's a positive place where I think you can start to build from in terms
Is
of the
is he
way.
a is he a starter on a contending Toronto FC team?
Depends on what your strategy is, right? Like to me, it depends on what are you going to do with those DP spots. Do you target wingers in those spots?
Well,
Or
does this play, let me rephrase that. Does this play alter that strategy if that was the case? Or, you know, could you see them using Theo or as a piece as a starter moving forward?
I could potentially see him as a starter moving forward. Again, I do agree that this is a stretch.
Yeah.
But I'd like to see how he takes this stretch and continues to develop. Right, if he continues to develop and the trajectory is going the right way, I don't see why you couldn't potentially go into a season next year and try to compete with Theo Corbiano as your starting
I
right
agree.
winger.
I agree.
Right,
I mean, look,
um,
6 goals, 2 assists. Again,
that's pretty good.
he's the guy right now, but, I
Mhm.
mean, he's also 23 years old, and, we're seeing a Theo that we haven't seen so far yet. So, you know, who knows what else is still to come, but if he continues to keep up the way he's been playing these last, several weeks, I see no reason why he can't be a starter on a contending MLS team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, yeah, I guess, do you wanna get into a little bit of what this team could look like moving forward in terms of,
In a
DPs?
second, but I want
Sure.
to ask you sort of the question it was more of a flippant comment on Twitter, but I am curious your thoughts now that you've seen a couple of games after the DPs have gone, and we're talking about this effort in this team, and it feels like this team is a little bit more together on the pitch, at least from a performance perspective. Do you think this team is better without the designated players at the moment?
Um, are they better? Are they better? Are they better off? Can I answer that question?
You could answer, but I am asking, do you think this team is better?
This team is not better
Hmm.
without Insigne and Bernardeschi. Are they better off? Absolutely, though. There's a difference in that.
Yeah, true.
Um, they are a team like this isn't a long term. There's no long term success here, right? Their ceiling is lower without those two players in the side.
Yeah.
But I think they're going to be more competitive without them, if that makes sense. If that makes sense. So like their ceiling's lower, but their floor is probably higher. Does that make sense?
I get where you're going with the analogy. Essentially, you're saying like this team from a competitive and compete level will be better, in terms of fighting together, but the
Yeah.
talent wise, there's not much more to go with the team in terms of just overall raw
Exactly,
talent.
exactly. And look, sometimes it's funny. I'll use a baseball analogy here. Your beloved Boston Red Sox.
Excuse
Um,
me? Did you say my beloved?
yeah, it was the
Rude.
sarcasm. Like,
Rude.
um, yeah, nobody likes the Red Sox. Let's get real. But they traded a guy in Rafael Devers who was arguably their best player. Um, they were not in a playoff position at the time, and things were spiraling. They traded Rafael Devers, the team gets less talented, but all of a sudden they go on a run and they win 10 games in a row, right? Sometimes it is the case where it is addition by subtraction.
Yeah.
So this team is definitely better off without those two players, and there is going to be a brighter future without those two players. And they've got themselves out of this dark hole that they've been stuck in for quite some time. But expectation wise, I mean, look, this team still isn't anywhere close to being a playoff team,
Yeah.
and I think the team realistically is probably going to struggle to score, goals. Not that
They
they
were
were scoring
struggling to
much
score goals
before, but
with
they're
the DPs. I mean,
yeah, exactly, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So, okay. So let's talk a little bit about what this team could potentially look like. We got a couple of questions here. Let's put them over here. So from Boris, in terms of what this team could look like in the immediate future in terms of the upcoming transfer window. The
Totally.
summer transfer window or secondary transfer window opens up in a week's time.
Yeah.
So that's where we're gonna see if Jason Fernandez is gonna cook or not. What do you think, or how do you think this team might go about improving the roster during this window, or do they just stand pat and say we're just gonna figure out what we have and go from there?
Yeah, no, I think two things are going to happen. I think this team is going to add a piece that will be a piece for the future. Um, and the second thing is, I think that there are going to be guys that are on the trading block for future assets as well. So I think, look, this is quite clearly a rebuild. There's a lot of players on Toronto FC that could potentially help other teams at the right price. A lot of players that are on expiring contracts that could help other teams. I think it's probably a good position for Toronto FC to be in as sellers heading into the secondary transfer window. If there is the market for these players, I think it would be wise for Jason Hernandez to consider moving these players in exchange for future assets. So, like, and even a guy like Raul Petretta, you think of like what's his future here. He's a guy who's on an expiring deal. Think of a guy like even some younger players too, guys who you know we talked about Kosi. Like we would love to see Kosi here, but if Kosi is, you know, a- appealing to another club, is it someone you consider moving? What's DeAndre's value, right? Um, could Derek Etienne have any suitors in the league? Kevin Long, like, what's his future look like, right? Is Sean Johnson as good as he has been for the club? What's his future look like?
Yeah.
Right. I think you got to be in the position to really make some tough decisions, even though who have played well. You've got to be in a position to make some tough decisions for the benefit of the team. So I imagine it's going to be active. I just don't know if it's going to be active in the sense of all like sign, if that makes sense.
Yeah, a lot. It feels like in my world, the MLB trade deadline coming up, and if you're a seller, you're getting rid
That's how
of
you should.
expiring
That's how you got to
contracts,
approach
and
it.
yeah, and look, I don't necessarily disagree with it, whether it's getting GAM or getting even draft picks or thinking about maybe getting a young player in
Did you
return that
say
you splash
draft
on
picks?
TFC too. I did say draft picks.
Draft picks.
Sorry.
You want draft picks?
No, I don't say I want draft picks, but I mean, look, here's the thing, right? If the idea is you're trying to rebuild and you're trying to use assets to get newer, younger pieces into your team, right? Like that might be something that they look at. They may still look
I'm
at the draft
full
as a means.
Philadelphia Union there.
I don't think they're going full. They're not going Philadelphia
I
Union. They're
am.
not
No, I'm
like
saying I'm going that way. I don't think
I look. I get a lot of teams are doing that too, but I just don't think TFC can really be in a place where you're like, I'm just gonna go full Philadelphia Union, right?
yeah,
Like
absolutely. That's fair. That's
you
fair.
still got pieces. I mean, they like their draft pieces, like Reed Fisher and Michael Sullivan in TFC two. They seem to really like both players,
That's
and
fair.
both have played pretty well for TFC two, for a pretty entertaining TFC two team. A couple of questions here. Um, Somebody's asking about Cassius Mailula and trying to figure out where he is at. He has officially returned from his loan at Wadad. Um, I
Uh,
mean, returned is in the sense that
He's
he
still
is
on a beach
back because
chilling
the
somewhere.
loan is technically over, but he has left Africa. I think he's still in Africa right now. But technically, they're giving him time because he gets a vacation after the Club World Cup, right? So,
Totally.
yeah, but
Totally.
do you think he's in the plans, or you think they're trying to ship him out?
They're to put on, yeah, first plane out of here if
Yeah,
he even comes back.
yeah. I mean, look, they got to try to find a buyer for him because what I wouldn't pick up is
I think there's
buy clause.
interest though.
Yeah,
I think there is interest. Like he had some positive moments there with Wadad, and then I think they wanted to bring him back, just not at the agreed price that
I
they
think it was like
had.
900K. I heard the report being for the
That
transfer
yeah, I
fee.
think that was reported, which is essentially what TFC paid for him in the first
Yeah,
place.
yeah.
But I imagine you're gonna have to eat a bit of a loss there. But hey, TFC been doing that recently, so I
Yeah,
don't think
I
a
guess that's
couple
true. And why not
extra
just keep on
players there.
going? All right, there is again another question around. I saw this rumor that Bodo Glint might be looking for into Ulla Brynhildsen. Obviously,
Mhm,
that deal would go through Midtjylland, whether that be a loan or whether that be a permanent signing.
mhm.
No idea if that is true or not. I haven't really seen anything else about it since that one sort of tweet came out. I don't know, Mike, if you've heard anything or you think that might be valid, but what do you think about Ula and his future at Toronto FC? Because that's a big decision this front office will need to make.
Yeah, I think right now it's a no-brainer that TFC aren't going to pick up his contract option. Look, it's really tough, man. You watch the game on Wednesday night. He's so isolated. The service is brutal. Um, and then he gets a few moments to, show off a touch or show that he can win a battle. And maybe some of those moments fall short. I don't know where his head's at, where his confidence level's at. But I mean, he's playing such a tough role right now in the position that he's in. There's no one that can run off of him. There's no one that can find him in behind. He's kind of on a on an island there. So look, it's a bit unfortunate, but I don't think there's enough there right now that he is showcased to warrant DP because that's what he'll have to be. If
Yeah,
TFC do pick up his option, he turns into a DP because of the cap hit that they would have to absorb for the
for the
transfer fee.
transfer
So
fee. Yeah.
it's a no-brainer right now that TFC move on from him, and I wouldn't be surprised if other clubs are sniffing around him right now to give him another look.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think it would be a bad thing either if he goes now. Like if he's just not going to be a part of the future and you're not picking up his deal at the end of the season, like, and a team in Europe wants him, and probably Mitch Jones looking like, well, you're not going to pick it up, and we're going to get money from somebody anyway for him. Thanks for everything. I mean, look, in the end of the day, it's not like I don't think he's necessarily been a poor player for Toronto FC. I think to your point, he hasn't gotten a lot of service. He's been injured for parts of his stint here. You can see the flashes, right, of what
Yeah,
could be.
for sure.
It's there, but I don't think we've seen enough of it on a consistent basis. And like, he has decent hold up play, but that's just not enough from a DP money perspective, right? That's not, you can't pay that in a striker, and think that's enough for this team. Okay, so we've talked about potential signings. I don't think it's going to be a super busy time for TFC in this transfer window. So sorry, everybody who thinks this team's going to go and sign like 5 players. I really think you may see one, and then you might see some players exiting. Um, but maybe let's look a little bit past that and into the off season, we'll probably do a show where we go over the roster, how they've done this year, and who do we keep and who do we not keep.
Yeah.
But just in your mind, Michael, who are the players that you think at this point, and I know it's early, but at this point you're going to kind of say, this is probably it for you at Toronto FC?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Raul Petretta, Sigurd Rosted, um, Ula, which we talked about,
Yeah.
Derek Etienne Jr. I would love to see Kevin Long back. I don't mind seeing Matty Longstaff
Really?
back. He's on a very cheap contract. To which part? The Kevin Long? Oh, I think
Sorry, that
Mike.
might be me. That might be freezing. Sorry about that.
You're good. Really to Kevin Long?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and Kevin Long is right now he's their best center back, quite frankly. So I would love to see him back. I think he provides a little bit of that toughness. He really embodies what I think Toronto FC are trying to build here. He's very old, yes, but I mean, look, he's still a very effective player, and I think he's someone you'd want to go into war with every single time of the week, every single day of the week. I would love to see them get rid of Henry Wingo, if that's possible. He is under
That has just
contract
not worked.
through
That's a weird one.
2026.
That's a weird one for me because I thought that was I thought that would work. Like I thought
Yeah,
he would fit kind of what you're trying to do, but it just has not worked
I
at
agree.
all.
I agree. Yeah, I agree, Boris. I would keep Davy Flores. Um, and then you got the young players who are people you got to make decisions on because look, the other part of this is there's a lot of positive movement, I think, in the academy. And there's a lot of positive movement in MLS Next Pro, and I think there are players who are, um, we've seen for years starting to, you know, make that jump, and whether that jump is to MLS Next Pro, so yeah, MLS Next Pro, or
Yeah.
is that jump is to the first team? There's players waiting to get in there. So, you know, how does a guy like Nathaniel Edwards, what's his outlook look like on this team? Um, you know, what's Kobe Franklin's outlook look on this team?
It's a big
And
question.
I personally would, bring Kobe back in a heartbeat, but he's clearly a guy who has very much struggled for playing time here. Um, is Hugo Mbonge part of this team's future? I looked him up the other day at 100 minutes this season, playing in USL Championship. So, as a guy who I was very high on early on in his career, but it just hasn't clicked for him. Charlie Sharp, I mean, he's had a wrong one, so it's unfair to really cast a verdict. I mean, you look at a guy like Koski, like it's dangerous for us to go through this and say, this young player is this, this young player is that, because when you never know. Like you never know what how long it'll take for a young player to develop, and who knows over this next stretch. I think for young players, this will be their time to kind of prove it and
Yeah.
prove themselves. And you mentioned the word audition earlier. It's time for them to audition. So yeah, I can't write any of them off, but just if you're gonna go today, that's kind of the direction I would head.
Yeah. Okay. I think a lot of that, what you're saying, it makes a ton of sense. And I think about I even think about Sean Johnson. And look, a lot of people know I'm a Sean Johnson stan. Like, you know, he is great in the locker room. I think he's a great leader. But to your point around value for him, around the league, can you get something that of value for him? And is it time to give Luka Gavrin a shot as the keeper? I don't know if you do that now or you wait till the off season. But I wonder if it just makes sense to keep Sean around if, again, if you're not, I mean, look, MLS can change very quickly. We've talked about that a lot on this show, but it feels like this team is still going to need another season to really kind of get itself righted before we really can start talking about potentially contending.
Yeah.
Things can change, of course. Does it make sense to keep Sean Johnson around if you're really not going to be a contender? And does it make sense to maybe move him and give Luca a shot in goal?
Yeah, I think it does make sense to keep him and
Okay.
keep him as long as possible unless you get a good offer, right? He's not untouchable per se,
Mm-hmm.
but he is someone that you want on your team any day of the week, and he is an
Fair.
asset in Major League Soccer. That's like the biggest thing for me. When you take a step back and you look at these players from a roster building standpoint, the ones you really let go of are ones that aren't assets, right? If someone is an asset on this team, that means they can net you value via trade or transfer or whatever that may be,
Mm-hmm.
right? If they're not, they can't net you that, then then it's a decision of cut. But yes, I think if the right offer comes for Sean Johnson, you got to seriously consider it, just given where the position that TFC is. But look, goalkeepers are also funny. He's also shown no signs of fading, and we get it. He's up there in age, but man, this guy's having another stud season.
He
So
is.
I'd love Sean Johnson here for another 5 years if that's the case. Why not?
Yeah, for sure. And like he's again, I don't necessarily want to see him go at all. I think he's signed through next season as well.
He's got an
Um
option for next.
okay, yeah. So from that perspective, like, and I would
It's quite the
really
cabin.
wouldn't take it. Yeah.
It's over $1
That
million now. It
that's the
jumped up.
thing. But again, that's what assets kind of cost in this
But
league.
that, and it's also like where TFC are right now, they can afford that.
Yeah.
Right.
That is true. That is true. Okay. All right. So outside of that, I mean, like, look, you got to figure out what Zay Monlouis is going to be. He'll be back
Well,
probably next season. He's probably not playing again this year. Same with Nixon Gomi. So you got to figure out what he's going to be. Lazar Stefanovic is an interesting one because as much as, you talk about Kevin Long, and you're right, like, a veteran presence, at center back, and arguably your best center back. I wonder how you continue to develop Lazar, because he's got the tools. It's there. I just wonder how he can fit into this puzzle piece and get better and get more minutes on this TFC team come next season.
yeah, I mean, look, though, I think TFC need to upgrade at center back. I think that is quite clear. Like Lazar is what, 17 now? I don't think you need to force minutes for
Is he 18, 17, or is he 18 now?
Lazar. Is he 18 now?
I think
Regardless,
he's
I don't
18.
think we need to force minutes for him. I think minutes will come via injuries, or he's also shown the ability to play left back, right back on occasion as well. I think he's a guy who will get his minutes and earn his minutes when the time's right. But yeah, you're right. He is 18. He's going to turn 19 in August. So
Yeah.
still super young player. But it's a fair point, right? At a certain point, you want to shift the directions, but it is tough to just instill all that trust on an 18, 19-year-old. But maybe he'll get some chances through the second half of the year and showcase something that makes TFC believe that he can be an option for them at center back. But my opinion, he's got to be your fourth option at best, moving into next season if you want to be a serious contender. I got a question. DPs, right?
Yes. Yes.
You're Jason Hernandez. You have the ability to add, let's say, 2 DPs to this team.
Yeah.
What positions are you adding?
That's a good question. I think you gotta go at it. You gotta look at a 9. I think you still need to look at a 9. And then it's interesting. You probably depends on what you do with Maxime Dominguez. Because you could look at a ball progressing, like, playmaking kind of 10-ish player. I know teams don't really play with 10s anymore. But somebody who can really play make and set things up. Or you could look at another winger. which I know we just went through this. But I think it needs to be on the offensive end. I think you can build a relatively solid midfield, maybe not spectacular, but a solid midfield and defenders through TAM money and through other mechanisms that MLS roster building has. That's probably where I go with those two DPs. The additional question is, when do you do it, or when do you pull the trigger on these? I don't think you necessarily need to do that right now. I know a lot of people think you got two DP spots, the transfer window's open, and money burning in your pocket. One, I don't think this team has a ton of cash burning in their pocket at the moment. They've got cap space. That doesn't mean necessarily they've got the cash to go do stuff, because they just had to pay two players a lot of money to not play here. So I don't know if that transfer fee money's there. You could look on players on freeze, obviously. But I don't think you necessarily need to fill those roles at the moment. But, I'm interested in what you think in terms of both the position and when to fill them.
Yeah. The top 5 players, at least in Major League Soccer right now, are all some version of a number 10.
Yeah.
Right. You have, obviously, Messi. And then you have, who's probably not even in this conversation, but then you have Dreyer, who we saw last night.
Yeah.
You've got Evander on FC Cincinnati.
What season he's having.
You got Hani Mukhtar, who we will see on Saturday.
Yeah.
You got even Diego Rossi, who's probably more of a 9-ish player, but also can play, in a role as a 10. Look, the best players right now are 10s in Major League Soccer. Go out and get a 10. I don't care when it is. Just go out and get that next star for Toronto FC. Who will
Dare we say a Pozuelo type?
Yeah, all day. All day. Give me some version of Paz who can be a game changer for this club. He's got to be. It's got to be a player that can control the game, that can slow it down, that can keep possession, that can, battle if need be. They've got to be that guy that the team turns to, and you got to check that personality wise, and you also got to check that skill wise. So for me, it's a Cam, some version of it, whether they play as a second striker, whether they play as that, kind of those two number 10s behind the number 9, whatever formation Robin Fraser wants to use them in. Just go out and get that player to help this team offensively. And yeah, the second position, I'm torn between either a 9 or an 8. Regardless, they have to fill those two positions with two new high quality players.
Yeah.
Whether that be a Max Tam, whether that be a U22 initiative signing, they've got to get players in there that contribute. So if your DP's 9, go get a player that's an 8 that can be, close to that level. And there's ways and mechanisms to do that. So
well, that's what I mean.
That's
what I mean. I feel like you need a 9. I remember we've talked about this in the show. I've always said you don't necessarily need to use a DP spot to get a 9. You can find 9s out there that are high TAM players that can score goals for you.
Mm-hmm.
I've come around a little bit on that because I've seen teams that have good DP number 9s. There are some teams that have bad DP 9s, 100%. But the ones who really find those impact players, funny enough, a lot of rumors around Giakoumakis at the moment, maybe coming back to MLS from Cruz Azul, like finding those players, they can change games so quickly. Like a 10 can change a game by controlling it. A 9 could change a game by either breaking it open or making something out of nothing or out of one chance, right?
Yeah.
And those guys are hard to find, and that's why strikers cost a lot of money, right? I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. But I think if you're going to go that route, I think that's where you need to go. I agree with you. Like an 8 is also a critical need, but I think you can fill that either with a high TAM or a U22. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I agree.
There are mechanisms to help.
We'll see one on Saturday. Sam Surge, like that's a guy who can change games. through that. But what I will say is if you bring in a DP quality 9 into the system, they're going to look like a very average, ordinary player. Like I think any 9 that comes in the system, any realistic 9 that comes in the system at this time is going to fail, quite frankly.
Well, then that goes to my second question around timing. Like,
Yeah.
when do you fill these spots? And that's why I don't think you necessarily need to fill both DP spots right
No,
now, because I think you need to build the team around that to
there's so
get.
much building that needs to be
Yeah,
done, right? It doesn't matter whether they bring in a DP now or not. It really doesn't matter. This team's not going to all of a sudden flip the switch and contend this year, right? So just make sure over these next 2 windows that you get it right. And that's the biggest thing.
yeah, for sure. Like, to me, I would be fine if they didn't fill the DP spot this window. Like,
Sure.
just don't fill it. Wait to the offseason. I know it's harder sometimes to get DPs during the winter window because, just the
Yeah.
way the transfer schedules work. But you can do it. Like, there's ways to do it. If you got to pay the transfer fee, that's fine. I think TFC for too long has been like, we don't want to pay transfer fees, right? Like, sometimes if you need to get the guy that's going to change things, you need to pay a transfer fee. You did it with Pozuelo. Okay, you may have pissed off Genk at the time, but like, so what? That's what a transfer fee is for, That's what a buyout clause is, right? Whatever that looks like, use that mechanism to get that player. But hey, we'll see. As this window goes along, they may change their mind. Maybe it's Josh Brownhill. Maybe he's coming in, you know. Though I'm always cautious of signing players that had like a career year the season after the season before they become a free agent, Anthony Santander vibes. Anyway, that's it for me. That I think that's a good sort of summary of the last couple of games. They're in Nashville on Saturday.
Tough game.
Tough game, taking on a really good Nashville team. I think they just beat Columbus last night, right? 3-0 or
3
something
0
like that. Yeah.
They've also lost once, and it was to Miami the game before
Yeah.
once, and I want to say their last like 15 matches.
Yeah, they are flying right now.
Yeah,
BJ
they're
Callahan's really done a good job with that squad. And like, they're doing it by scoring goals, which I know that used to be the MO on Nashville's like defense, and score like one
yeah,
and win 1-0. That ain't Nashville anymore, trust me. And he's got Heine Mukhtar firing again, like looking close to MVP level Heine Mukhtar again.
yeah.
And Sam Sturridge has really come in and really adapted to the league really well. And that is going to be a tough game in Nashville. TFC historically never done well. I don't think we've ever won in Nashville.
No, we've definitely drawn a couple times,
We've
but
drawn, but we've
yeah,
never won in Nashville. So again, history not necessarily on your red side, but hey, this is a new vibes team. This is a DP free, everybody fighting for each other squad. Who knows? You go in there, you set up another good Robin Fraser tactical game plan against a very talented number 10, and you see where the chips fall. Because frankly, the pressure's off. This team isn't going to make the playoffs, right? So really, in the end of the day, it's about progression. It's about seeing who wants to be here. It's about seeing who's going to sort of take their opportunity and run with it over these next couple of weeks going into the end of the season. We'll wrap it up there. Oh wait a minute,
one
before we
more
go.
question before you go from Ryan. Do you think Theo could get into the Canadian men's national team if he keeps playing well for upcoming friendlies?
Tough, I
In
think.
in my opinion, no, he's too slow for Jesse Marsh's system, quite frankly. Like, I don't think he covers the amount of ground that
Yeah,
Jesse
it takes
Marsh
too much
demands of
time on the ball.
wingers. Takes too much time on the ball too.
Yeah,
But you look at, Jesse Marsh's wingers that he tends to play. Those are guys who are very mobile. Those are guys who run into the ground, or have the ability to just cover a ton of ground, more so than their quality on the ball, which I think Theo gets. Theo's obviously has a lot of quality on the ball. He's good at beating people 1v1, but I mean, there's level to it. Yeah, I mean, never say never, but I think it'd be very hard to see Theo involved in this.
yeah. I same. I just don't see it. And especially because look, they're not going to take these friendlies and treat them like friendlies, right? They don't have a lot of matches before their first game of the World Cup. So I think, for the most part, you're going to see mostly the A squad playing games from now until that World Cup. So, especially because they're going to be playing a lot of those friendlies, or I think all the next window, right? I think they're all in Europe, are they not?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I believe so. I mean, like, yeah, you got to displace a guy like Tejan or Ali Ahmed or Jacob Schaffelberg or even Jaden Nelson, or even Jevison's been playing on the wing too. Like, those are all guys who just run into the ground and run through a wall and can be game changers with their legs alone.
Yeah, and then just really quick before we go, the Touchline TFC does great work, by the way. If you're not following Touchline TFC, definitely do that. Is Schaff better than Theo? I would say Schaff right now, just in terms of his development, is a little further ahead than Theo. Yes, mistake the red card against Guatemala aside. I also just think he fits what Jesse Marsch wants to do a lot better.
Right? I think that's a big thing.
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing. I don't know if one player is better than the other. I think Schaff can be more effective than Theo, even though Theo might have a higher ceiling.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you, everybody, for tuning into another Toronto Till I Die. We really appreciate it. Obviously, all the comments, the community showing up when we are able to put on a show. We really do appreciate that. Thanks, Michael Singh, for jumping on board. I know you're a busy man these days, but we'll hope to be back soon with another show, hopefully wrapping up the next couple of TFC games. And then, obviously, if some big transfer news comes through, we'll be here to talk about it. I wouldn't hold my breath, but who knows? We thought before that we wouldn't be seeing signing, and then all of a sudden, they're signing Bernardeschi too? Oh. What the halcyon days we thought that was going to be the comeback. It was not. For Michael Singh, I'm Mike Newell. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Peace.
And wait. And baby, I'm TFC till I die.